Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome back to ModGolf Live. I am Colin Weston, your host. Thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel here. So, taking a couple of weeks off here with ModGolf Live here. Been working on some other things, getting ready for our next season of the ModGolf podcast. Hard to believe it's going to be season 17. Going to be celebrating our 200th episode in a couple of weeks' time here. Yeah, we've been doing this since 2017. Hard to believe, 8 years. And one of the topics I've been covering, technology, entertainment, this convergence of community building. But one of the overarching themes has been accessibility, making golf welcoming for everyone. And I've done my best to invite people that are supporting accessible golf for disabled athletes and just disabled, whether they're veterans, people that are never played the game before, and creating community around that. And today we're bringing that all together with our guest, and that is Dave Barton, who is the executive director for the National Alliance for Accessible Golf. So I'm going to be bringing Dave on here in just one moment here. But as we get started, I love to do this, covering the things I've been thinking about, what's been going on in the news, especially in the golf space they're going to focus on. And that's going to start with my Monday morning musings here. Still Monday morning here. It's 9 a.m. and I'm in Vancouver on the West Coast. Hey, if wherever you're joining us from here today, joining us live here on the ModGolf YouTube channel, I really, really encourage you to participate. So don't be shy. We got a couple people that are already jumped on and joined us here. So like I've already done in the comments, you can see here, hey, welcome. This is who I am, where I am. Also, let us know where you are. Let us know where you're joining us from here today. And as I did mention, our guest is going to be Dave Barton here, Executive Director with the National Alliance for Accessible Golf. And as also on here, you can see within the chat we already have, if you're not familiar with the National Alliance for Accessible Golf, so they are a nonprofit organization, industry leader in accessibility and inclusion that works to ensure the opportunity for individuals with disabilities. So Other thing I want to talk about here is part of my Monday morning musings. I did notice today it is President's Day in the United States. I'm up here in Canada. It's Family Day, so everybody's having an extended long weekend here, which is great. So I hope you're spending some time with your family and friends. But today there's a triple header on, not in basketball because the NBA All-Star game was yesterday, not in hockey because they're having the Four Nations face-off, which sadly Canada lost to the USA a couple of days ago, but hopefully we win today against Norway and we get a rematch on Thursday for the final, which would be great. That'll be exciting. But there was a triple header on with TGL. So if you haven't watched this, I've been covering it. I got invited when I was down in Orlando for the PGA show in Florida. I managed to get my media credentials and had a chance to even talk to Tiger and ask him a question about entrepreneurship and everything that they're building there with TGL. But it's interesting already mid-season that they're starting to tweak what they're doing, that they've changed some of the rules. So they've got this one rule, it's called the hammer. It's kind of like with curling. If you're not familiar with that, who has like the last shot or has the upper hand, that you can actually then make a bet and make the hole worth 2 points rather than one. And they found that a lot of the teams weren't using it. If they had the lead, they were just sitting on it. So they've changed the rules of that around to make it more exciting and scoring more points if you're behind, because they've had some blowouts in some earlier matches that teams could then catch up. So this will be interesting, and I applaud them for doing that. So there's 3 matches on today. I think one is starting right after Dave and I finish up here this morning, and at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So 3 matches today. So I'm going to be watching a bit of that. So I encourage you to watch a bit of that also. The other thing I wanted to mention, yes, we had finished up our season 16 of the ModGolf podcast. And as I always do, I wrap up our season by then having a recap of the previous dozen guests that we've had. So on the ModGolf podcast, hey, why don't you go to www.mod.golf. You can listen to that episode where I've got like this quick snapshot, a little soundbite from each one of our guests on there, of the dozen that we've had, these awesome diverse guests over this season, and also a bit of a preview for the next season. So if you enjoy the podcast along with our YouTube channel, why don't you join us there? And hey, since you're already joining us here, why don't you do us a favor here and subscribe to the YouTube channel here. We've got more than 1,000 subscribers. That's great. So that's unlocked a few other things that we can do on YouTube here, and we're going to keep that going. So hey, show us a little love, show us some support, and yeah, if you enjoy what we're doing here, please subscribe to the channel. All right, that's enough with me talking about my Monday morning musings. Now it's time for the main act here, and that is with Mr. Dave Barton. Dave, thanks for joining us on ModGolf Live. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Colin. Good afternoon, and great to be here. Thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we had the pleasure of bumping into each other at the PGA show back in January, almost a month ago now. Hard to believe time's flowing like that. It was actually at the National Golf Course Owners Association conference, which happened the day or two before in Orlando, right next door. And I know we first met years ago, Dave, when you were part of the NGCOA, but now you are the executive director of the National Alliance for Accessible Golf, which I believe you've been doing for 3 years. And the organization has been around since, if I've done my research correctly, since 2001. So gosh, you're coming up almost on your 25-year anniversary in a couple of years. So why don't you give everyone watching here today an overview of what you do and why you do it with the National Alliance for Accessible Golf?
Sure. Thank you. Well, I've got to plug the NGCOA real quick because that's what got my start in the association world. So working for Jay Karen and a great crew there is kind of what got me from the green grass side over to the association world. So it was a great education and a great time there. And actually one of their folks there, Ronnie Miles, who's the senior director of advocacy for the NGCOA, who's phenomenal with his knowledge of legislation and everything. He was the one that introduced me to this organization after I had departed the NGCOA. So I'm very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing here. But yeah, we were organized in out of some working groups in the mid-90s and established in 2001, primarily as an education, advocacy, and resource center when the golf industry realized that the ADA did not address the actual golf course itself, campgrounds, playgrounds. They addressed the buildings that supported those things, but they did not design features for where people were going to be playing or recreating and stuff like that. So that's primarily what we've been for that duration of that period of time. In 2010, we started a grant program with some great support from USGA, and that program's currently on hold, but we're working on that. And so we've done, I think, a good job here the last few years of kind of relaunching our education initiatives so that they're easier to find. And that's really what we want. We want to make things easier to find for golfers with disabilities or those that are supporting them, golf courses, organizations, et cetera.
Love this, love this. So anyone out there that doesn't know what ADA is, I know in my background in architectural design, that was the first half of my career. So that accessibility piece there, and that is the American Disabilities Act and making buildings accessible. And as then you mentioned how that rolled out into other facilities also, with golf courses being a bit of a laggard on that part. So you, with the organization starting in 2001, needing to be one of the groups to help to kind of facilitate that with golf courses, of the over 15,000 golf courses, both private and public in the United States. So, okay, so you're doing a lot of stuff at that 30,000 foot level, and you only have so many resources because you are this super awesome, lean, mean team, mostly of volunteers that work. Quite a few of them I've had the pleasure of having on the podcast, from Kevin Korn to Gianna Rojas and several others. So why don't you actually start by talking about, let's say, what you're going to be doing in 2025? Like what are those like top 3 things of importance that will have the most impact with your organization, with everything that you do and the limited resources that you have, but you rely on the partnerships of others to really make things happen?
Right. Obviously, we wouldn't be here without the great support from our volunteer board, which is represented by pretty much every leading golf industry association in the country. I won't list those here on our website, but we've got all the folks behind us, which is great, or we wouldn't exist. And so that's allowed us in the last couple of years to pivot and, again, kind of repurpose a lot of great information we have to make it more digestible, more accessible. So really our major push this year, as it will be for the foreseeable future, will be to do a better job of pushing education out, in a way that folks want to receive it. We're not the Department of Justice. We're not an enforcing agency, but we want folks to not get a phone call from them. So that's why we exist. So we kind of exist to push information out on the education side. One of the things we just launched, which we're very proud of, is the programs, facilities, and accessible golf cart database. We've got over 500 records in there now, and we are working hard now to solicit golf course operators and program leaders to put their information in there about what kind of instruction they're giving, who they're giving it to, and whether they do or do not have access to an adaptive golf car. As golfers travel the country looking for places to learn and play, they've got to know where they can go learn and play. And so the more information that's out there that we can help share, the better. And so, that list will only ever be as good as the folks that want to put their information in there. And with that, we're getting a lot of great feedback on our volunteer training. It's just one of the components of our education platform where we want to educate adaptive golf programs and events, tournaments about the volunteers. Volunteers make these things happen. They really do. And a lot of volunteers have never worked with individuals with disabilities. And it's not rocket science. It's just some basic communications and etiquette things that in the end will make the experience more positive for both the people participating in the event and the folks supporting it. And we want everybody to have a great day or a great 3 days when they're hanging around an adaptive golf event or a regular golf event that's inclusive in nature, that has adaptive athletes and regular athletes.
Right, right. So I'm curious, with even the 3 years that you've been there, as far as the awareness, because of course at the top of the funnel of anything, whether it's marketing or whether it's the good work that you're doing, I'm sure there's still a lot of golf courses out there that are not even aware of what they need to do, that first couple of steps. So I'm curious, just even the numbers here. If there's roughly 15,000 golf courses in the United States, how many are on board at that kind of different ends of the spectrum that have fully embraced to make sure that adaptive golf and people with disabilities can play when they need to, and which ones are maybe, let's say, hesitant or resistant, or maybe just aren't up to speed yet? So how do you go about with the database of golf courses to bring more on board, so that in 3, 5, 10 years, hopefully the majority, if not almost every golf course, will be aligned with your mission and the good things that you're doing?
Yeah, and you've said that the big number, 15,000 or so, and then throw in there just, so many great programs around the country that are doing instruction either at a golf course or separately. I have to be honest with you, when it comes to golf courses, I don't think anybody really knows quantifiably the number of courses that can say we are truly accessible, or better said, we are a barrier-free facility, which means someone can get from their parking lot to the 19th hole or wherever they go when they're done playing golf without having to go around something if they have an access requirement that may have them in a wheelchair or a mobility device or crutches. And so there's a research opportunity there. But what we've done to kind of stem the tide on that is we've launched a self-assessment process. It's free. It's on our education hub, and any golf course operator in the country can come do the self-assessment, where we've kind of identified the 3 or 4 key things that you need to do to truly say that you're an accessible facility. And I'm going to quote Jan Beljan, who I'm sure you've met, with the American Society of Golf Course Architects. She's on our board.
Yes.
Yeah, we certainly believe that most golf courses are better off than they think when it comes to access, because greens are typically accessible by mowers, but when it comes to tee boxes and other areas of the course, we just want them to take a look at it. So we've established a process, and there's a checklist the ADA puts out that makes that very simple. And so we really are pushing and encouraging operators to do that. And if they do it, they get a nice little badge they can put on their website from us that says, thanks very much for showing your commitment. Because, we're not going to enforce it. We're not going to recertify, but just take those steps to get the ball rolling.
Love this. Love this. Okay, so I've got your website up there too. We can kind of bounce around and look at a few things there. But one thing I wanted to mention here, well, I'm going to go off. Usually I do these things here. I've got a bit of a script, but it's very quickly I go off script here. It's kind of the way I roll here with things. I wanted to ask you about this before I dig into some of the other things that are on your website, and I wanted to ask you here, Dave. Over the last couple of years, there's been more participation in golf, getting clubs in people's hands on what we call non-green grass experiences, whether it's the Topgolfs and the indoor simulator experiences. I want to get your take on this, as far as, are you working with those, with whether it's X Golf and 5-iron golf or Topgolf, are you working with those organizations and companies also, so you can have people with disabilities have those type of golf experiences too, along with the green grass experience that the over 15,000 traditional golf courses that we have here. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, just as far as the entertainment side, or what are you doing there?
Yeah, we're not specifically, working with any particular organization in that space, but I would say from a very general sense, those types of entertainment facilities, they are fantastic entry points for folks learning to play golf, whether they have a disability or not. So I like that kind of all abilities thing, because someone might be more willing to walk into a Top Golf and hit golf balls for the first time than to kind of go to the golf course, which is, sometimes intimidating for folks who don't understand that process. So we're certainly believers that that is a great entry path. And one of the things that we've been talking about a little bit lately here, and as I think you might have seen recently in our magazine, Brian Rourke at Ping Golf, he's on the, leading edge of adaptive golf fitting in the country. And they are doing some really, really cool things that we're paying a lot of attention to right now in a positive way with PGA Tour Superstore. They're not one of our partners, but they're doing great things because they are working to train all of their associates to do fitting at their 74, 75 properties now that'll soon be 100 around the country, to be able to fit an adaptive golfer. There's some skill sets involved there, but as Brian Rourke said in the interview, anybody that's a fitter that loves fitting is able to work with adaptive athletes. You just have to look at, their fitting requirements, in a different way. And every student is different. Doesn't matter if they have a disability or not. This person might not have a leg or two legs or prosthetic arm. So how do you help them swing the golf club? So it presents some cool challenges. So we're big fans of what Ping is doing with the PGA Tour Superstore for sure.
Yeah, love this. You had talked about, and we had this kind of scrolling on your website there too, as far as having the access to vehicles or cars for disabled golfers. So you talk about that a little bit, because we've had, I think last season or 2 seasons ago, we had Verticat, and there's a couple of different, and I guess there was the Paragolfer. So there you go. You can see actually the upright kind of standing vehicle that we have for single disabled golfers. So can you talk a bit about that, because those particular vehicles are not cheap. So as far as having access to that, are you looking now at encouraging golf courses to actually purchase 1 or 2 of those, so they'll have them on site? So tell us about that program and the database you have there with the accessibility for the golf carts themselves.
Yeah, certainly as it links to the database, as we mentioned previously, courses can get on there and say whether they have one or don't have one, or whether they might share one with another property. So we're in the business of certainly encouraging golf courses to lean that way and try to get hold of one, or try to find a way to share the asset with someone that's in your area. Even if it's a competitor, you're both going to be better off if you have a vehicle available. The vehicles that are out there, as you know, the Paramobiles, used to be called a Paragolfer, a Paramotion's the new version, the Verticat and the Solo Rider. Those are the big kids on the block, I guess. There's a few other different variants out there of other vehicles, but those are the ones we mostly talk about. And the reality is that it's just like shoes and just like golf clubs. No one cart is going to ever be good for every individual with a disability, because they have different requirements. They have different abilities to stand or not stand, or the way they seat, where their paralysis or limited mobility may be. So, and I know both of the primary manufacturers with Solo Rider, Verticat very well, and I can tell you that they are amazing people. They work well together. They're working to help, work on what you mentioned, which is the cost. They are somewhat cost prohibitive right now. It's a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
And so when we get back to, encouraging golf courses to do it, when we speak, I tend to say this, the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, doesn't say you have to have a cart, an adaptive golf cart. But what it does say is that you need to provide the same access to the goods and services that anybody else can take advantage of that might not have a disability. So I just encourage them to read between the lines and move towards finding a solution. And I know the manufacturers of the vehicles are looking real hard at how to kind of, try to bring the costs down to make these a little bit more affordable, to get them out there. The demand is not high, to be honest, at every course for these things. And that's where the database comes into play. Okay. There might be a car in the area. There might not be one in a specific facility, and you might be able to coordinate borrowing it or using it, or at least know what facility to go to that has the car. And quite honestly, in utopia, the utopian view, I guess, would be, I want to be a golf facility that says I have one or have access to one, because I want people coming to play my golf course if they're traveling around the country, or I want them coming there to learn. So, they're obviously the seated golfer community is amazing. Larry Solano runs the Seated Golfer Association. He's an amazing guy. If you've ever watched him play golf, you've also heard him play golf because he's exceptionally passionate when he's hitting the golf ball. They're doing some really cool things. And so, and they're a part of the entire adaptive golf community, but they happen to be the most visible one regarding logistics and what that cart requires. And so we work to educate superintendents. We were out at the superintendent show last week doing a power hour presentation about these vehicles and the self-assessment checklist. And that's really right in our sweet spot for what we like to do.
Nice. I want to ask you this, just as far as the general public of golfers with pace of play. I'm sure, sadly, that there's always these grumpy guys that have played forever, and they're not welcoming. They prefer if they only had the golf course for themselves. Are you seeing less of that pushback of people being self-absorbed and not being accepting of let's say if someone comes with a disability with a Verticat, for example, or is kind of an upright cart, and thinking, oh, it's going to be so slow? Like, talk about that. From what I understand, you could actually, some of these players, or most of them, will play around in less than 4 hours, or just as quickly, if not quicker, than a traditional walking or riding round of golf. So let's dispel that myth, because there's still, you're always going to have those grumpy, curmudgeon-y, sadly, they usually look like you and I, middle-aged or older white guys that are complaining about this, that have played forever. But let's dispel that myth right now that this is good for the game and good for everybody.
Yeah, and I love you teeing that one up, because we've certainly worked to dispel that myth. And I'm certainly not a seated golfer. When I speak, I can never have the perspective that a seated golfer has. But, observationally, as a golf pro who's been around the block a little bit, having played with seated golfers and golfers with disabilities, that community is keenly aware of the myths that surround what people think about what they're doing on the golf course. And I will tell you, I won't name names, but I play with people on a Saturday morning, and when I see I'm paired with them in a certain group, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be a long round, right? And it has nothing to do with their ability. They're just slow golfers, right? And so I think you're going to have slow golfers and fast golfers, regardless of whether they have have a disability or do not. I mean, that's just the game of golf, because a lot of the slowness comes to what's going on up here, whatever. And so I think, to your point, I'd say, yes, I think there's a recognition now, with some of the exposure that's coming out of the United States Disabled Golf Championship down in Florida, that Ping, the PGA are involved with, as well as the United States Adaptive Open. There's a lot more awareness that, listen, they're just people. They're people first. That's the bottom line. They're people first. They're playing golf. And anyone that might feel a little curmudgeonish needs to kind of back up and reassess their own personal view of life in general, if you ask me. And I say that in a nice way.
I agree.
I'll tell you, the other thing with cars is like, well, the tires, the mids, listen, courses get wet sometimes, and sometimes access can be limited. But if you can get a mower on there, that golf car is not going to do any more damage as well. And I'll tell you, folks, I'll say it, folks my age that might be more mature than other people, and I'm talking from an age standpoint, not a lifestyle standpoint. Yes. They have a tendency to, drag their feet with soft spikes is more of a risk to damage to the greens than these vehicles are, because they are trained to use them. They know they're being watched, and they're very aware of it. So I think people just need to get beyond that and say, come on in, here we go, let's go play some golf. And because it's all about inclusion, I love separate adaptive golf tournaments. They're great, but it's all about them playing on Saturday morning with their buddies or their girlfriends, or whoever that may be. It's about being part of what's going on, not this kind of separate group that's kind of hobnobbing around the country, which is still good because they still want bragging rights. They still want to know they're the best golfer in the seated category or the best golfer in the neurological category. But it's even better when they're winning their club championships in their division with their USGA handicap index. Okay, again. So yeah, absolutely.
Love this. So you fully embrace the power of partnerships, and you would not exist be able to do what you do without the partnerships you have. So tell us a bit about the partnerships you have with the VA, so the Veterans Association across the country. Yeah, just talk to me about a bit about that and how you work with them and get, especially with wounded warriors that have never picked up the game, because I've heard so many unbelievable, powerful stories of men and women that have kind of lost their purpose and have been on the brink of despair and suicide, that golf has brought them back from that brink and create a community around that. So can you perhaps even share a couple of stories that touch your heart and the relationship that you have with the VA?
Sure. Well, I'm a veteran, as you know, and I did a 22-year Navy career, and then I got in the golf business, which I love. And I was, I flew helicopters. I was very fortunate in my career to in the Navy with what we were doing is a little bit different scene than what a lot of these folks coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan have had to deal with.
Sure.
And of course, that created a really good upswell in a number of individuals that are playing golf that might have disabilities. It kind of grew a little bit after that. So, our organization is not directly involved with the VA at all, but however, the PGA of America with PGA Hope, and I'm a PGA Hope certified instructor. Didn't teach last year, but they have a relationship with them that helps support their programs around the country. It's such a popular program. It's for all veterans. It's I wouldn't say it's oversubscribed, but there's waiting lists sometimes because it's a very popular program. And so honestly, it kind of feeds into what one of the best parts of my job is that even though I'm a veteran, I love veterans programs. They're great. I think they're fantastic. And to your point, golf therapeutically has saved the lives of many veterans and non-veterans who, again, get included back in society and get to be part of something again. And so, but one of the best parts about my job is not only do we get to help programs when we have a grant program that are supporting veterans, but we also work with trying to support organizations that are bringing kids into the game and non-veterans, because there's a whole nother group out there that are doing great things in life. They might not have been a veteran, we again love veterans, but they've got to be looked after as well. And so VA, no, we're not haven't done anything. We've not really ever certainly aware of what they do and the great support they have. As an ex-government person myself, they're a very, very large organization, and I think I'm glad that the PGA is able to work with the VA to do what they do, because it's complicated working with the government sometimes, and that's exactly why the ADA is so complicated sometimes. It's a big government instruction, so we try to pull out the good stuff so someone who's got a full-time job doesn't have to try to cycle through a document that's that big trying to figure out what they've got to do to comply.
Yes. Well, on the note with the Veterans Association, it was a couple of years ago, I had a gentleman out of the UK, John Simpson, who has been a massive advocate for adaptive golf. And I believe, I don't know if it's every 2 years, they have a Ryder Cup style event called the Simpson Cup, where it's Team USA versus Team Europe. So just having all these different pieces and organizations that are just helping to raise the awareness and the competitive level that there's even for the general public to now to see in everyday golfers, that I just think it's fantastic that you've got all these organizations and people like my friend Gianna Rojas, who is like the energy that she has, and I know she's one of your ambassadors. So perhaps you can talk about not only Gianna, but perhaps some of the other ambassadors and advocates that you have that help spread the word and the gospel of what you do with accessible golf. Yeah,
really lucky to get to meet some really amazing people with what I do, and they're really in the trenches. Folks like Gianna, John Bell, and Jason Faircloth with the US DGA, US Disabled Golf Association down in Florida. Jonathan Schneider, of course, with the US AGA up in the Chicago area, North Carolina. They run programs. They teach teachers how to teach all over the country. The golf associations are really getting on board with this now, in large part due to the post-US Adaptive Open success. So the Golf Association of Philadelphia is really leading in that area, along with the Georgia State Golf Association. Arizona is doing great. Arizona and Philadelphia took advantage of our volunteer training for their adaptive open tournaments. And there's certainly more than just those three. I could go on and on, but the state golf associations are really ramping up. And in particular, David Windsor at the Georgia State Golf Association does an amazing job with teaching teachers and helping establish programs around the country. And again, with what Ping and PGA Tour Superstore are about to do, I think it's a really, really good thing. And there's, like you mentioned, some of my board members, Kevin Korn. I could go on and on, name dropping, but it's they're the ones that are in the trenches every day with these students, which I think is what makes us a little bit unique. We don't run competitions.
Yes.
And we don't run programs, which are amazing, and they are very time consuming in a good way to pull off and to organize and make happen. Super full-time gig making that stuff happen. So for us, we like this kind of sweet spot. It gives us a little bit of objectivity, with what's going on in the adaptive golf space, simply because we're not running our own programs. We're looking for ways to support these programs all over the country and the courses where they can learn to play. So I think it makes us, puts us in a spot where hopefully people will see us as exactly all we want to be, which is just a resource. And maybe if I can real quick, Colin, on that, I'll just mention GAIN real quick. The GAIN is our community platform that we launched a couple years ago. It's the Golf Access and Inclusion Network. Again, everything we give out is there's no fee for it, thanks to the support of our partners, Cafe Granite, Wadsworth Foundation, and the Golf Industry Associations. We're able to put this stuff out for free. And GAIN is really just a non-social media networking platform that you can find on our website for golfers. Maybe it's a family member of a golfer, maybe a child. They're trying to get information about how their child can learn to play golf. They can get on there and ask questions. We've got probably close to 350 people on there now, and that ranges from golfers to industry experts. We've had some real good conversations on there. We've got one going on right now. A young lady is doing a research project for her doctoral degree regarding the benefits of recreation to amputees. And so we're helping her share that so she can get some information. We had an engaging conversation several months back between adaptive golfers who are seated golfers, talking about the different issues they have with wear patterns on their bodies and things like that based on seats. So it's a wide open thing. So we're really proud of it. So we're just on the front edge of that, and we've got a couple of people signing up every day here and there, and so it's growing. And again, it's a place where people can get educated in I love social media, but it's a non-social media kind of forum where you can have a different kind of conversation sometimes.
Well, you must have been reading my mind there, Dave, because in a way you just answered one of my last questions here, and that was for parents out there watching that have a child with a physical disability, or let's say if they've had recently become an amputee. Mm-hmm. Where would they go? Because I'm sure it's overwhelming not knowing where to start, but it sounds like GAIN is a great portal for them to have that first connection to find out, even within their city or region, of where they can go to get the support and guidance to start that journey. Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of one of the reasons we established it. And I will say this as well. I answer my emails and I answer my phone when people are calling, trying to get information about this. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have all the answers. I do not. But I'm getting pretty good about knowing who does in this space. And I think that's where, we can come in, because I can go to GAIN. There's probably within 2 or 3 calls, this person's going to know who to talk to in a certain state or a certain area, because the network, I think, is really that strong, and it's only getting better. And again, that's just a platform. Folks can put their events on there, their programs. And so it's just something that we felt like it was time for. And so we're really excited about where this goes to kind of augment the education. And we also host a lot of our resources on GAIN as well as a public site, so people can find them in both places to make it easy. And so again, big fans of the GAIN platform and where it could possibly go. Love this. Okay, to finish up here, because you've been at the job as the executive director for the last 3 years, so I'm sure there was some reorganization, and I know your background also with technology and media, be able to kind of supercharge and make that more efficient. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are for the next 3 years or even the next 5 years, of where aspirationally you'd like to see the organization be, or overall in the golf community in the United States and globally, as far as where adaptive golf hopefully will be on the trajectory that it's on, of where you would like things to be in a perfect world 3 to 5 years from now. Yeah, great question. For me, as I think I alluded to earlier,
everything we do regarding the resources we make available, and even with Golf Inclusion Monthly that we've launched, we love to see that evolve into a little more robust digital magazine, just to tell stories from around the country, because that's what storytelling is, what makes things happen. So if those things are successful, the business, we can get more people seeing what we do and what we have to offer. We just want more people taking advantage of it. And if more people take advantage of it and see it and stuff like that, it just simply enough, it increases our ability to draw in supporters, because in the end, what we want to do is support more programs, with that grant program again, because again, there are grant programs out there, but they can be convoluted sometimes and very competitive, and sometimes good programs can't get money. I've been fortunate to be involved with Make Golf Your Thing for a few years, and they're doing some great things as far as funding programs around the country, including programs that involve folks with disabilities, and that process is about to start up again. But we want to be around in that space because our organization, the folks that work with us, have an expertise in this area. And so when we're looking to support programs, that's what it comes down to in the end, is kind of, getting there. So in 3 years from now, I'd like to be handing out more money, not keeping it, handing out more money to get more programs going, to get them off the ground, to help sustain them for the first couple of years. Because really, if we do that with the education that we offer, I think it puts us in a pretty unique spot, until at some point, if a major golf association says we can do the education, we can support them financially, I'll say, that's just great. I love it. We've done our job. But until I see that happen, and we're going to keep the foot on the gas pedal.
As you need to do. Before we go, I see we've had a couple of people join us here today. Not a question, but a comment. And we've had Steve Fluke on a couple of weeks ago on ModGolf Live, and so I'm sure you're familiar with Steve and all the good things he's doing as the founder of Power to Golf with their Swingless Golf Club. You talked earlier here, Dave, about getting more people on the golf course to play with their friends, to make it more accessible, so they're part of that community and that social aspect. And I know what Steve is doing here also, that golf club, that he's seeing that also, getting that club in the hands, and people say, well, that's not real golf, but yes, it's a golf experience, and they're playing the game and they're back out there with their friends. And that's the most important thing, is we're all hardwired for tens of thousands of years, have that social connection. When that's taken away from us, it's not good for our physical and our mental well-being here. So yeah. Hey, Steve, love what you're doing. I'm sure, Dave, I'm sure you know who Steve is.
Yep. Steve's a good man. I saw him at the PGA show. And again, he has a great product, again, that is helping people get back on the golf course. And some of the folks that use it around the entire course. Some just need to maybe get off the tee, and when they get around the green, they can still, swing a golf club more prototypically. So it's always like I said, like we talked about adaptive golf carts, it's not one or the other. It's these things that help get people involved, and even, not to golf on a tangent, but even, I'm sure you're familiar with Fling Golf. Yes. Alex Van Allen, some of those guys, they're doing some really cool stuff. And, I mean, I say this personally, do I have a problem with someone has a fling stick in my golf group if they want to come out and hang out with us? I mean, probably not. I mean, it's the golf course operators and stuff, I think, that have to kind of get beyond that a little bit. But again, it's a golf ball, it's a golf course. They're putting the ball in the same hole that you're doing with the golf club. So it's whatever the definition of golf is, it's probably not our purest definition of golf, but it still involves a lot of aspects of golf, right? So
it really is.
Yeah,
it does. And it's interesting. I actually met Alex, who heads up Fling Golf, for the first time at the PGA show. And he's been back and forth with me for a couple of years, wanting to get on ModGolf. And in some ways, a couple of years ago, I was resistant, thinking, is that really a golf story? And to your point here, Dave, I've come around, and I'm going to have him on ModGolf Live in the upcoming weeks here, because once again, that is another golf. I don't even call it golf adjacent. That's another golf experience, just a different way to do that. And yes, so I've come around. You see, you can even teach me some new tricks every once in a while. That I can be swayed. I can be swayed. So hey, why don't we finish up there? I really appreciate your time here today, Dave. I want you to enjoy President's Day also. And myself here, like I said, we're having family day up here in Canada. So going to go spend some time here as the long weekend is extended. But I'm so glad we had a chance to hang out and learn more about all the good things that the National Alliance for Adaptive Golf is doing on ModGolf Live today. So, hey, Dave Barton, thanks so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Colin. We always appreciate the opportunity to speak, and certainly it's a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for what you're doing to help tell these amazing stories that are going on out there.
It's my pleasure. All right. Take care. Well, Dave, we'll talk soon. All right. Bye for now.
See you later.